This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 190. Trust me, kids, when it gets to 200, you're going to be in for the shock of your life. So
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Tim, I think this is a story you might appreciate.
I hope
The
so.
headline is Fishermen Find Remains of Missing Man Inside Shark in
I
Argentina.
love it already. Love it already.
The remains of a man who went missing in southern Argentina earlier this month were discovered inside a shark after it was captured by local fishermen. Now, law enforcement said the family of 32-year-old Diego Barria were able to identify his remains because of a distinct tattoo that was visible. He had last been seen, in the southern province riding his all-terrain vehicle on February 18th. So
Okay.
an extensive search began for the father of three after his damaged ATV was found, which is strange, but there was no signs of him. So on Sunday morning of that week, two local fishermen contacted the Coast Guard and said they caught three school sharks close to where his ATV were found. And they said that when they were cleaning the sharks, they found human remains inside one of them.
What kind of shark was it?
School sharks. I don't even know exactly what those are.
I
But
don't
it's
know what the hell that is.
unclear how he ended up being eaten by the nearly 5-foot shark. I mean,
A 5 foot? No, he was murdered and he was fed to them.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Now, they said they believe that Barrio had an accident, was dragged, and they're investigating if there was another vehicle involved. It's rather suspicious to me.
Very, very much so. I mean,
first of all, a man who's 5 foot tall, a shark who's 5 foot. I mean, I don't know how tall Barrio was, but a shark is not going to eat something that's the same size it is it? I don't think so.
No. I mean, when I've done like scuba and stuff, and there's, you go to the reefs and there's sharks there. There's basically three types of sharks that you have to worry about. But what they say is, don't worry about it. I mean, think about it like this: if you're near a coral reef, it'd be like walking into a backyard that has a farm, and you have a grill, a bunch of hamburgers, and then there's a cow over there. It's like, am I gonna eat a hamburger, or am I gonna like now butcher a cow and cut that up and then eat that? I mean, if you're the same size as the shark,
it doesn't make sense.
No.
I think he was chopped up and then fed to it.
Did you hear about this guy in Massachusetts? Well, they basically found DNA evidence on a sweet potato. Did you hear about this?
Well, wait, before we get into that, and I can't wait to hear it, but this is another strange thing, because we know that dolphins are sexy and sweet, but actually a river dolphin bit off a woman's foot down to the bone in an extremely unusual attack. But again, this is in
that's
Bolivia, and she was swimming with a tour group and other tourists. And they were playing with the pink river dolphins. We love them.
I've seen them. They're in the Amazon.
When she left the water, when the dolphins began to act more restlessly after a child tried to pick one of the dolphins
up. There you go.
She was bitten and her foot almost taken off. But I mean, you know what? Stop fucking with nature.
Well, the fun fact. More dolphin attacks on humans every year than there are shark attacks.
Sexual
events. Well, because sharks, they're not trying to eat you, but it's just a wild animal. And so there's this whole, since Flipper, people think like, oh, dolphins are like us. They just want to hang out with us. Well, that's not true. Wow. And people run, and any mammal, if you can hear a mom with its little ones, it's going to fuck you up if you even come close to that shit.
And I don't blame them. I feel the same way about my band members. Carry on, Tim. You were saying about a sweet potato.
Well, yeah. It turns out this guy was 12 years ago. They're using the sweet potato. It's a mafia hit. The guy was using a sweet potato as a silencer.
Wow. I never even thought of that.
Yeah, I never thought of that either. But now,
I usually just bake them and eat them. But now I know what to do with them.
I love a sweet potato, but I guess they make good silencers if you want to murder someone.
Well, I'll remember that next time I'm feeling frisky.
But I think the sweet potato's going to take this motherfucker down. Sweet potatoes are some of my favorite food. Not to embarrass myself here.
Well, you do have a murderous appetite, Tim.
Oh, there we go.
What
are the Polystochotis punctata? a very, very rare insect from the Jurassic period,
Oh, I saw this.
found in an Arkansas Walmart.
What,
Um,
huge, right? Huge.
I mean, these things are giant. They're giant, and but it wasn't going to go unnoticed. Some person, I don't know who it was, but was going to get some milk,
They're
and they're like, "Is that like some wall decoration?" Because these things are fucking giant. And
like bigger than a dinner plate
yeah,
to
oh,
put
yeah,
it
yeah,
in
they're huge.
perspective.
And of course, no, and they capture it so rare, and now it's like hasn't been seen in North America in over 50
So
years.
what's going on with it? Is it alive still? What does it eat?
It,
Who
it,
knows?
it was alive, and they're now saying it's coming back because for it to be
Whoa. Okay.
found in Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, really, who wants to go there unless you have to?
But I mean, giant insects. I mean, I guess lobsters and crabs are the biggest ones I've encountered, but I don't know. Yeah, kind of creepy. I mean, I'm glad they exist, but
Well, Tim, most performance art, no names included, I've seen in
yes.
the past 20 years are really boring to me. However, one of our favorite, I'm glad he's out of politics now, politicians, that would be Adam Kinzinger, just did an incredible turned heads on Capitol Hill this week by sending performance artists dressed in straitjackets and blue and red tinted glasses to the House offices. Now, it's part of a campaign that Kissinger is launching against political extremism and attention grabbing political antics at a time when the House is focused on flashy hearings and probes into the Biden administration, which, by the way, I think they all need to be investigated. But so Kissinger told Politico, which first reported his campaign, that the glasses symbolize the ideological binary in the American political system, end quote. We've been programmed to see so much to believe that each event in the world should be seen through blue or red glasses. So, anyway, Kissinger retired from Congress this year after voting to impeach. Thank you very much. uh, Trump, who should never have been elected anyway, and also serving on the January 6th Select Committee. I don't know what's taking them so long, but the performers were first spotted roaming the House office buildings on Tuesday, perplexing lawmakers and staffers with their unwillingness to speak or do anything to broadcast their message. And the mystery was solved the next day when they began carrying QR codes that linked to a website denouncing political extremism and calling to, quote, reject conspiracies and stand for truth, courage, and integrity. When has America ever stood for truth, courage, and integrity? And what Kissinger is saying is, well, we call them drones. They're just kind of droning around. They really don't have a purpose at the moment because they just feel unrepresented. They feel like government is just kind of going along. So he said that he was also meaning to satirize the, quote, desperate need of every lawmaker and staffer there to get onto television and go viral on social media. So he said also the purpose of them staying silent was at first to cultivate mystique. So he's spending $250,000 on an initial launch, including TV ads, digital ads, billboards, and other performance art campaigns. I think it's absolutely fantastic that he's doing that because, we've got these ass clowns like all of them, basically. If I started to name names, we'd be here all night. They're all fucking ridiculous, in my opinion, save maybe 1 to 3. And I think that's sign me up.
Sure, for sure. Well, speaking of some of the politicians, I wonder what Lindsey Graham thinks of thinks of the whole Murdo family, Alex,
Oh,
the lawyers in the
Christ.
14th district in South Carolina. I mean, they're so powerful for like a century, and basically kind of owning those fucking courts and the judges down there.
Well, you mean the
Clearly,
South Carolina criminal lawyer who's been accused of murdering
yes,
his
that's
wife
what I'm
and
referring to.
son, which trials are ongoing on TV
But
now,
that
which is
family's been killing
closed.
people for decades.
Hello. And
I
look,
mean,
at least he admitted he had a drug problem, as if that's an excuse to commit murder twice. What was good, the prosecution today said, they brought this word up for the first time. They said his biggest fear was being shamed by the truth. He's been a chronic freaking liar, like most politicians, for his entire life. He's a lawyer. He was a prosecutorial lawyer. The trial was ridiculous. I saw most of it, and it's obvious guilty as frickin' I hope he's charged.
We'll see what happens. Well, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how corrupt it is.
I can't see how he's going to get out of this one unless he's paid off the entire freaking jury.
That hasn't been unheard of. What about Linda Kasabian from
the
Manson family? She's gonorrhea. She's done. She died.
No.
Yeah, lived to 73. I mean, speaking of California, I mean, what's up with the snow that's been happening in Southern California?
New York just got its first snows of the season.
Yeah,
which was
I know.
Like hardly any, and it was gone in one day. The weather is wackadoodle. There's tornadoes everywhere. We know what's happening. It's a global climate crisis, and not to mention, that's one aspect of the problem we're facing. After hearing that there were approximately 1,000 train derailments.
Oh, my God.
Well, look, it goes back to this country is a hazardous waste dump site, period. And this is before the Manhattan Project, but there is dumpings all around. And if you wonder why there's so much cancer in this country, just breathe the frickin' air, drink the water, or eat the food, and there you go. Hello, good luck. In spite of that, it's another wonderful day, and right now, for the first time in a while, we're all here in lovely Brooklyn, surrounded by three of the most polluted waterways in the country, and surviving, because that's what we do, in spite of all the possible devastation that surrounds us. Here at the Lydian Spin, we, as stubborn, resistant, independent, I don't even know what else to call us other than the fact that fuck you, everything that seems to try to cut us down ain't going nowhere. This is episode 190 of the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. And you know what? I hope you live another day, because I will. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and our very special guest, a good friend of mine who I haven't heard from nor seen in a long time, Tommy Grenas, who was responsible for helping me and with Len Del Rio and Nels Cline, Nels Van Horn create one of my favorite albums, Smoke in the Shadows, of which the song Smoke in the Shadows is the theme of this podcast. Welcome, Tommy Grenas, composer, musician, printmaker, producer, promoter. Am I leaving something out?
Fat bastard, maybe.
Oh, come on.
A lovely bastard, although I've never known him to show his bastardly side to me. But then again, why would he?
No, and this time coming up to St. Patrick's Day, Lydia is definitely the most perfect description of a Sheila gig that I've ever met.
Roar. I mean, how much do you celebrate St. Patrick's Day? I mean, I know in the States
to the full extent as an excuse.
Oh, good. What, just to go nuts? What do you think of the Chicago tradition of dyeing the river green?
I'm all for it. I mean,
are you gonna dye your beard green?
No. But I'm already
pubes green. Pubes green.
What's that?
Are you gonna dye your pubes green?
No, but I'm already starting to look a little bit like a leprechaun the older I get. Like my eyes, I'm starting to get into that. Like, what's his name? The guy that Edward G. Robinson's sort of version of a leprechaun.
Oh, whoa.
Tommy, you're looking good to me, my friend. I don't believe a word of it. You might act like a leprechaun. You got plenty of tricks up your sleeve, and they're striped, by the way. I'm just saying.
Did you ever see the Leprechaun series, the movie?
Yeah, Leprechaun in the Hood is my favorite.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. I forgot.
It's my favorite version of the Leprechaun movie, Leprechaun in the Hood. It's like kind of like Brother from Another Planet with a leprechaun. And
hang on a second. Hang on.
Yeah.
Simon, we have some interference here.
What's going on?
What the hell's going on here?
I don't hear anything. I hear everything's smooth on my end. Oh, we started talking about leprechauns. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Suddenly, we've had, at least in my head, of which there's often many sounds I don't recognize, I had some leprechaunish interference. It seems to have subsided now. Maybe because clowns like leprechauns, they don't scare me, nor really, they don't fricking amuse me either. I'm just saying.
What
I
are
can tell
what
you
are
exactly what it is, Lydia. It's like I came from a place like that was bastardized and called Ulster County in Northern Ireland to a place in New York called Ulster County. So
Ooh.
I think the leprechauns through all the vortexes are getting kind of jazzed up and sort of like creating interference because you're messing with their whole unicorn unicorn unicorn. That's
as long as they're
communication.
as long as their unihorn doesn't make my cheek sweat, I'll be fine for the rest
Well,
of this
the
podcast.
unicorn, and as long as there aren't leprechauns, because
Yeah.
they can get really tricky.
Wait a minute. Now
Yeah.
we're talking a leprechaun. Oh,
Yeah. Well,
I know a few of those Irish babes. Oh yeah.
I've definitely got the unicorn.
Nice.
Well, tell me, you grew up in Ireland. Obviously, you grew up. Most of your youth, I think, was in Belfast, correct?
No, I totally grew. That's where I'm from, is Belfast. I totally grew up in the most beautiful period of Northern Irish history.
Oh, and so I mean, may I go there? I mean, of course, Belfast was pretty turbulent back in the day, but where you grew up, was that less so?
Not really.
Okay.
But I think the whole thing about it was like, I kind of, the whole childhood part of it was put into a blur just because I decided to be put in a blur, but we had some great music coming out of that. Wherever there's angst and agony, there's always great music, and we had the undertones and stiff little fingers and,
Poetry as
all
well.
that. Yeah,
Poetry
all
and
that great,
writers.
all that angry sort of music, and then of course there was like James Joyce and all,
Well, of
so
course.
it's all just filtering down and into your brain, and then what's coming from the UK is as far as like, I think our hippie music was more anarchic than hippie music was in America. Like, thank God you guys had the Stooges, but we had Hawkwind and we had
All right.
Gone and like all these angry sort of like hippie
prog rock. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
it was, I mean, Hawkwind was nowhere near prog rock.
no, there's something else. Yeah. Did you ever see? Did you ever see Hawkwind back in the day?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course.
And they were probably my biggest, one of my biggest influences as a band was Hawkwind for sure. And I'm very involved with the band, still am to this day. So
I wrote to them as a teenager, and I got a letter back 6 months later. That's when you used to write to fan clubs. But by the time I got the letter back, I was already over them. But that's what a 13 or 14-year-old does. Next.
Yeah, but what I liked about them, they were a real tribe of freaks, like because they really were like, like where everything was love and peace over in California. It was all about dirty, muddy fields and like kind of unemployment and garbage bags, which kind of led up in the way I think Hawkwind led into the Sex Pistols and punk very, very aggressively. And like it was recently that John Lydon said he was a roadie and a huge fan and was very inspired by Bob Calvert and his like sort of Luftwaffe outfits with leather gloves, leaning into 50s mics and spitting on the audience. So there's a huge influence between Hawkwind and British punk. And I think that's why I gravitated towards Lydon almost with a passion when I was young. I just saw him. I was infatuated with John Lydon.
I gravitated toward him. I wanted to punch him in the snout. And by the way, I still feel the same way, but that's just me. Did you hear his song that he tried to enlist for the Eurovision? His Irish.
I haven't.
Hawaii.
Oh my God. I mean, it's so sad and weird and just weird.
I don't know the take of it being older is like, his wife's got Alzheimer's.
Look, I will give it.
Yeah.
Look, I no, hang on. Hang on. That he has taken care of somebody for so long is amazing. That he did public image is amazing. That the Sex Pistols were what they were, and to a 14-year-old boy, I guess they were very important to me. They weren't I thought of them as t-shirt sellers.
Sure.
But nonetheless, I mean, you can't deny, even if he's a Trumper who tries to get rid of the homeless in front of his house when he should be building them homes, can't deny there's something about him to both love and loathe. I'm just saying. So anyway, Sex Pistols, Undertones, that period. You were a young teenager. What did you do? Did you go to London, or when did you come to the States? What did you do? So there's this music going on. When did you start doing music inspired by these other rascals?
I think there was a little bit of the when we were young, like in Belfast, like, and obviously I'm quite a bit younger than you, Lydia, like, but I'm talking about like around about 83, 84. I got the Cramps record, and I think the Gun, especially, no, it was actually the Gun Club Fire of Love album. I was completely obsessed with, and we started this band called the Swamp Rats, and like, everyone's doing their usual Bauhausy gothy thing at that time, but I think we thought that we were doing a sort of like Celtic version of the Gun Club or something. So, but we decided to go to London because there was this whole psychobilly scene going on, and we went out there, and that's when actually I met Nick Turner from Hawkwind, who was doing Inner City Unit. That's a whole other story. But like, I was just, and I have this record. Now hold on one second.
Pull it out.
No, that's not it. Wait a minute. Oh fuck, that's not it. Where is it?
I'm sure you have 1,000 records.
I have this record.
Oh yes. You're holding up a no New York vinyl. Hey,
I think No Newark is a
no Newark.
Yeah,
I'm going to produce No Newark. I'm going to produce that.
Oh my God!
There's no Newark because you can't even order a drink at Newark Airport.
Hello.
And I was flying to Dublin. It's unbelievable. What sort of crap is that? Oh, anyway.
Well, they also have this.
So wait, did you buy that in London? No New York?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. I think I got a penny for that. Thank you very much.
No. It was like a very strange record. And this when I heard all the, like, especially Mars.
My favorite band ever. Yes, Mars.
Yeah, and what's his name? James Chance.
Conjunctions.
And it was kind of really good because the fragmentation that was going on in from New Wave and all the goth scene and stuff like that was really more interesting to me than all these like big bands that were being pushed forward at the time. And I just like, because I've always been like about, you've got to reinvent the instrument. I don't like the idea of like you having to just like go by standards of rock and roll or musical notes. And like that record, I think really kind of changed me. And Lydia,
Tommy, what?
Nels Cline felt the same way. We had a very strong.
Well, I wish it would have changed his guitar playing a little bit more when he was working with Wilco. That's all I can say. Oh, that would have been amazing. Do some skronk, put some skronk on it.
He loves you. He loves you so much.
Oh,
we should have him on.
So sweet. We will. That's so nice. No, I mean, look, the version managed by Carla Bosilic of Heart Attack and Vine that Nels Cline plays on of the Tom Waits song is amazing, but also Carla and Nell's contribution to our album, Smoke in the Shadows, was absolutely invaluable and fantastic. I think it's the best stuff he ever did. It's one of my best albums. Could be one of the best albums any of us ever did. I don't know. So underrated. So amazing.
I really, really love that record. I'm very proud of it, Lydia. And I'm giving credit to you because you totally understood the direction I wanted to go in as kind of a landmark many years after Queen of Siam. You understood that I wanted to go in this weird jazz noir, heartbroken Hollywood Boulevard, more like Santa Monica Boulevard way. And every song on it it's diverse, yet it's consistent. It holds together, and that is you, Len Del Rio, and the other fantastic musicians on it. So I praise to you, my friend. I don't need praise. I know what I am. Oh, thank you, Lydia. And I was just equally as excited by the Gallon Drunk stuff that happened right after it.
The big sexy boys. Yes, thank you.
To do that version of Babyface Killer that we started as some sort of like semi-schlocky sort of like go-go beat, like sort of like anti trip
Well,
hop.
just a rock song, but it didn't. It somehow Big Sexy Noise did bring that track to life.
Yeah.
Thank you for recognizing that.
No,
I love that band as well.
It's actually a really fucking great version of that.
And by the way, your real name, Johnston and James Johnston of Big Sexy
really?
Noise. The connective tissue here is forever winding and unwinding. So, okay, you go to London with the Swamp Rats.
Scots Irish.
Oh well, we know them around here. America's full of them.
You go back to reality. You go to London with the Swamp Rats, inspired by the Gun Club. What happens?
I ended up playing like there was the Hope and Anchor was squatted out at that time, and one of the biggest things that happened to me at the time was meeting Penny Rebond, and the whole Cross Collective, because it destroyed my thought about rock and roll completely, and like what the aesthetic of rock was. I mean, I really got embodied heavily in Cross, and especially Rudimentary Peni, who are like still one of my biggest influences. And that's with everything. That's just that way of, there was that way of thinking at the time, but the sort of like caustic take on like music being completely from a chaotic view, like the universe, like this complete chaos, was a big part of that. But like, you know, obviously things changed later, but the whole Cross connection was really big, because I remember buying a Rudimentary Peni record and it said, if you don't have a house, call this number. If you don't have anywhere to get food, do this. And there was actually instructions to live on a rock and roll record.
On a non-rock and roll record, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't know that at the time. I just bought this record, and I was really into Steve Blanco at the time, and the fantastic art that was in it. And I was really, really inspired by what was going on with Cross, and especially Rudimentary Peni at that era.
But also, before we started recording, you also said like Albert Ayler, and that really ties in in some ways to No Wave. I mean, I consider Albert Ayler a very political artist, just because he was so out of all loops except his own, and including whatever his death, however that happened.
Well, it also goes beyond that, because he wasn't even really that accepted amongst the traditional jazz infrastructure at all. So he was really an outsider, and that's brave.
I got turned on to him by Archie Shepp, because somebody, for some reason, somebody left this record. You know, when you always go to like in London at the time, it was squats and places that you just happen to, you know, because you know at that time, you know, you didn't have money to pay rent, so you're just moving from squat to squat in London. Right. And somebody left Fire Music by Archie Shepp, and this, like, amongst all their records, but it was like there was actually a birthday party album there too. But this Fire Music record, I was like, I could totally relate to this as jazz and music. I just loved Fire Music so much. And then buying and getting involved and listening to more Archie Shepp stuff, I learned about Albert Ayler. Like, it was a mentor to
gateway,
him.
Like a gateway. Yeah.
But Tommy, when did you first pick up an instrument, or what were you doing in Swamp Rats? Were you doing music? Were you singing? What was your role?
I was playing drums with that band, and you know, at that time it wasn't like like a drum set. I would just pick up bits and pieces of drums in Belfast and put them together.
Cool.
It was kind of like a tribal sort of like kit, and the other guys had no musical experience whatsoever. We just thought, obviously, we could make a band because we loved music so much. So we thought, well, we don't have to learn music to make great music. And I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, I thought, you know, I actually was back in Belfast recently, and I heard the music and that we had done. I actually thought, like, fuck, this is actually kind of cool. I always thought it was shit, you know, but it was actually kind of good. So
So drums were the first instrument because you play a lot. I mean, you make music from very diverse sources. And so after Swamp Rats and you're in London, when did you start getting more psychedelic, like with the Farflung stuff? Or how long did you stay in London and what was your move after that?
I started playing a little bit of guitar and like joining in at like these like sort of like crossover punk psychedelic scenes, and there was bands at that time like the Tribe of Crow, this early version of Osric Tentacles, and all the Hawkwind tendrils started like getting into my punk and goth roots that were happening at the time, which I saw there was a connection to it, and I just started like getting really interested in that and getting more involved with Nick Turner and some of the Hawkwind guys, just
by imposing yourself upon them.
Pretty much so, saying I can do this. I think this is
that
music.
That is the Archie Shepp continuation, because I worked with Archie Shepp, and basically.
Are you serious?
Yes. And
one of Tim's teachers was Yusuf Lateef, which
I also worked with him professionally. But Archie was kind of a fake it till you make it. I mean, he was an intellectual, but he was a fake. He's like, I'm just going to do this. And by the time I was playing with him, we were playing standards. So he had kind of gone from the outside in many ways, because he wanted to challenge himself. And just you kind of just doing, I'm going to play drums, I'm going to play guitar, just kind of throwing something together is kind of that spirit. Whether, I don't know if you knew that's what his trajectory was or what his story was in terms of that.
Well, I had a fair idea about it, but I've always just been kind of a listener. Sometimes I don't like to engross too much in people's methods or what they're, we all know I love Supreme and stuff like that, but somebody give me a book about it because I love that record so much. But it's such a big record and stuff like that. But I didn't want to know the magic, so I never read the book. So it's kind of like
fair enough.
Kind of like that. I just want to know what the spark is.
Well, and sometimes with magic, you understand it without having to read all of the text anyway. You get it or you don't get it.
Well,
that's what magic is.
But also there's one thing that magic is, but also you end up using your own imagination to realize maybe the same result. So basically it's like, well, how did that person do that? Well, if someone told you, that's one thing. If you come up with your own solution, even if it's not the way that person did it.
Well, and if it really enters into you, right, which is what great music, art, literature does, it impregnates the right people who should then carry on in the non-tradition of what it is.
And then the same way that the vortex continues. Whenever I met my first wife, Kathy, who Lydia knew, and I ended up just marrying. I just wanted to get out of London at the time. I mean, I was playing with a lot of different projects, and it was mostly around that sort of anarchy, sort of like punk. But it was different because there was a psychedelic context to it. So I brought that idea to America, and that's whenever I landed in Los Angeles, and there was the whole the beginning of the industrial scene going on, and through that my next band was called Pressurehed, and we were on this label in LA, and that's when I realized I had to get rid of the guitars and stuff, and I really got obsessed with.
Well, I was about to say.
Wait, Tommy, go ahead. You decided you had to get rid of the guitars, and you became obsessed with what?
Synthesizers. And that's whenever I got to LA, and it was like last year's technology was being thrown out. So a lot of the stuff in the background, all this modular stuff, it was like that technology moved so fast.
Right.
People didn't exploit the technology of a lot of those great instruments that were being chucked out for the next top of the line thing. And I was going like, wait a minute, this stuff's still pretty great, and I can still use this. So as Lydia will probably contest to, the place we had in Highland Park was like a graveyard for just junk. and old electronic
Well,
equipment.
it certainly didn't sound like that when it came out because the sounds are indescribably gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. But like, it was even like the kind of crustiness of early, we were realizing even all the old sampling gear and stuff at the time, there was a certain crustiness that couldn't be replicated because we loved all that early
8-bit, 8-bit
yeah,
sampling.
like Eric B and Rakim and stuff like that. Like it all just started blossoming when I came to Los Angeles. What my goal was to do musically, and that was not ignore history, And I got that term from Marky Smith. It was like, know your history before you start talking about the future and
Well,
stuff like
by
that.
the way, speaking of Marky Smith, I bugged him for years to do a spoken word show, right?
You did it though.
And it was terrible because he was so drunk.
I loved it. He did the football results. It was like there's many people that were at that show. He just sat behind uh, a table with a microphone doing the football results. I thought that was great. And
I'm surprised you were there. That's amazing.
no, I was there. I was there with you because we were meant to do something, and I was there with Gene Gregoritz, and we were all sitting in the back. And I just remember before you were late and you didn't get there. I remember I was sitting there, and Harry Dean Stanton walked into the dressing room, and he goes, "Where's Lydia?" And I goes like, "I don't know." And then he goes like, "A skeleton walks into a bar with a mop." No, what's he said? Oh my God, I forgot what the joke
Tell me,
Oh, no.
you might be mixing up two shows. I'm not
Oh,
sure because I think the show you're referring to is myself, Harry Dean Stanton, and Hubert Selby and Steve
yeah.
Abbey. Oh, that's a different show than Marky Smith, of which he was a disaster. But anyway,
Oh, that was one of my favorite shows ever in LA was that show.
how
And you
did we
were
eat?
amazing that night too.
How did we even meet, Tommy? I don't
I think it
remember.
was, I think it was I was doing it was like I just started doing after Pressurehead. I started doing the Anubian Lights, and we did this record that was really successful on Crippled Dick Hot Wax. And then Tony said to me, "Do you know who Lydia Lunch is?" And I said, "Oh yeah, my Queen of Siam." And I went off on everything. And he goes like, uh, "You should do some music with her. I think
Okay,
you and her."
amazing that a record company actually had a great idea and brought
Yeah,
us together. Ripped us off
yeah,
as they may have, but still, it came to an amazing
yeah.
conclusion.
So we did that. We did that EP called Cocaine, Champagne, Cocaine, and Nicotine.
Nicotine stains.
And it was a 10-inch record. And that's when the trouble began because you really hated the artwork on the cover because I don't think you were contacted by. And Tony submitted some picture of he
Oh, it was
found up in the
ridiculous.
loft of Nicoletta. And you were pissed off from the get go because you thought the music was so great. And
So much more sophisticated than the cover
yeah. But I think it
of
was,
the EP.
but
But I
I
mean, the
also,
song was great. I mean, cocaine, champagne, and nicotine stains. Come on.
yeah.
Excellent.
And Patango Tango. And there was another song.
Trouble.
Trouble was great. But I think one of the things was we also knew Nels Klein and Carla from the Geraldine Fibbers. We were all mutual friends, and even Carla was just like, "Oh, I'll come over. I know Lydia," and it was like a kind of a party.
Well,
I had that house.
and the songs that Carla sings on are so amazing. I mean, she is one of my favorite vocalists of all times. I mean,
Yeah,
Geraldine Fibbers, I love, but I mean, Carla doing a whole cover of a Willie Nelson album, and she's just amazing, an evangelista, and so invaluable. And the song, you know, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but the one which is about why do I fucking hate you because you're an asshole, and Carla does the main vocals and also Hot Tub.
yeah,
But it's an amazing collaboration, and I think we popped it off pretty quickly in your basement.
yeah. And I think it was just at that time in Highland Park and what was going on. up there at that scene. There was Mr. T's Bowl, which was Fuzzyland, and there was just this whole thing. And you lived up the road at that time, and Nels. What was Nels doing? It was didn't he have a thing called the Nels Klein Trio?
Could have been
that existed. That existed, yes.
Yeah. So there was that.
But I mean, back to the sound of that album, it hangs together, but all the songs are so completely different. I mean, from really hard. I mean, I always thought that Norah Jones should have covered "Blame," which Adele Bertay sings on with me, which is great.
It's a
diverse. It's got some like South. I mean, touch My Evil, which is basically based on the movie Touch of Evil.
Well, that's one song that still hits in my head. When I'm taking a shower in the morning, I always get picked up in a roadside diner, just air for the number 5.
Every morning you hear that in your head? Every morning you hear that in your head?
Well,
not every morning, but a lot of mornings. There's something about showering and
Orson Welles.
And you're Lydia going like, this will only get you nowhere. There's something about like, there's one line that always gets me over and over. And over the years, it's always like, what is it? It's something about like,
I don't know. Some of my best lyrics are on that album. Let me know if you figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. It's
Trick Baby. Let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, my one and only.
I like the torture on your victim, or I can't remember. Oh my God.
Well,
anyway,
maybe on the next session you can think about it. Trick Baby, based on Iceberg Slim. My only rap song, which I think is fantastic, which I believe I did in one take because I couldn't do it any other way, which Adele Bertay also sings on, is a great track.
You know you want it.
Yeah, I played your mama, I played your papa. Yeah, now you're gonna play your motherfucking self anyway. Just saying. More of that to come.
So you like psych rock? You like James Joyce?
You like psych rock?
No, I'm talking to you, Tom. We were interviewing you.
Oh, okay.
We were interviewing you.
I love.
And you like James Joyce? Do you like getting psychedelic on alcohol? Because James Joyce would get pretty psychedelic on alcohol.
Well, one of the great things about moving to this part of the world is, and Lydia might remember, is I love psychedelics and I love mushrooms.
And they're pretty much very available in every major city in North America.
There's
now.
An amazing mushroom I just discovered up here called Big Laughing Jim, which really lives up to its reputation.
Well, Tim is quite a psychonaut.
Do you do heroic doses, or are you kind of like a nibbler?
I'm actually a micro. I've always been kind of like, for the past 10 years, I started getting into that whole microdosing culture, and it certainly keeps me alert until the booze starts kicking in. That's my problem. If I dedicate myself to the psychedelics, I'm normally okay. But I guess it's the Irish in me. The booze is always going to take over because I like nothing better than getting snockered.
Well, I mean,
Lydia will attest to that.
I won't attest. I will detest to that. I won't attest to that. I know not from what you said.
I'm talking about as far as I'm concerned.
You can get
what would be your favorite drink of choice? I myself like a good hot toddy, but that's just my drink of choice.
You know what, Lydia? You kind of converted me to a good cognac.
Hello.
Now she's gone back to whiskey, I have to say.
Well, hang on. I was never into whiskey before. I am a fluctuator. I am
always have been.
I'm very fickle. I go between this, that, but I like the hot toddies, cognac or whiskey. But
one time Lydia kind of, we were doing this. Oh my God!
Oh, it's fine.
I like the view.
So one time Lydia waltzed into the room with a big bottle of cognac in her hand, and I thought it looked. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a room. It was. She walked on stage with a bottle of cognac in her hand and did one of the best performances I've ever seen. To slowly drinking this bottle of cognac, and then I think she ended up throwing it into the audience or something.
I'm a sipper. But tell me,
you were sipping. but then I was like, I got to try cognac, and I became kind of a sort of a convert of the cognac. I like the vibe of it. I have
Well,
to
the
say.
thing about a cognac is it's kind of a narcotic, which usually I do not prefer narcotics, but it usually tells you you've had enough. That's probably why I threw it into the audience. But I'm remembering one of our shows, Tommy, where I banged the round microphone stand on my foot, had to go to the doctor. Then I had to do the next performance on a couch. Do you remember that? They
Oh
go,
yeah,
"Oh, you
Brent.
can't perform. You can't perform." I said, "I'm going to perform, even if I have to be reclining on a couch,"
No,
which
that's
I
funny.
did.
But they also that night, I remember another funny thing about that night was they put Lena Lovitch or something, like they did something where I think they put Lena Lovitch on
Advertisement?
on the advertisement on the front of somehow they put Lena Lovitch, but you still give it all you have
Well,
at
I
that time,
certainly
and
didn't give it Lena
people
Lovitch.
didn't give a shit. People still
I
loved it.
All I remember is the pain and reclining on a couch, which was totally appropriate for
Yeah,
our Anubian Lights, Smoke of the Shadows album.
yeah. No, it was fantastic for
Don't
sure.
ever tell me I'm not going to do a show. I think I've only missed one show in my life. Forget about it.
No, it was a classic. It was a classic amongst others. Like, and if you remember, that was the tour where none of her shit appeared at the airport as well.
Well, what happened?
I think we got to Austria, or no, it was Treffen. We were playing some. Was it the Treffen Gothic Festival? But none of our gear
Oh,
arrived at all. Like nothing was there, and I
so
just remember.
what did we do?
I think we borrowed stuff, and you just like kind of very cordially yelled at the airline company and got comped or something.
Well, that is the big Lou and Mia, but probably you
Yeah,
have to do whatever you have to do. The show must go on. We're show folk. It's what we do.
So
exactly.
up there in Woodstock, I mean, there's a lot of musicians up there and a lot of studios. Do you kind of hang with others and trade ideas, and or you
No,
kind of like
I've never really had anything to do with a lot other than Lydia and a couple of other people. I've never had anything to do with musicians in America at all. Like most of
whoa.
the my connections are in Europe. So I do a lot. I just record here, and then I spend most of my time in Europe. And actually, I still have the same booking company as Lydia, IBD, with Sabine
Good
Waltz.
luck with that.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Hello.
yeah, but like the only band I've really been involved with in over here is a band called Chrome. And I played with Helios Creed and Chrome for the past 25 years. So I've done a lot of records with Chrome, and actually before Helios, I was involved with Damon Edge, which was his. He was one of the first people I met in LA when I moved here, and we did some music, but he died pretty quickly after that. He had some uh, uh, drug problems.
No.
Okay.
What about
At that
Damo
time.
Suzuki?
Oh well, my connection with the well, I should go back a little bit because this record label I was involved with called Cleopatra and this is way before they became a big label. This is when literally, actually, Pressurehed in my band is the first record of a band that they put out,
What
and
year is that, Tommy?
that's 1987. And that was the first band they put out in the United States, and the owner Brian Pereira at that time, he was a huge Hawkwind fan, and he was doing a lot of the Hawkwind fan stuff over here. But we agreed to bring over all the members of Hawkwind to do a tour in America with a band called Sleep.
I know
In
sleep. I know sleep.
Yeah, at that time, and they were Hawkwind fans, and we were fans of theirs. So that became a tour that was one of the first real all original members of Hawkwind, other than Dave Brock, who is the captain of the ship with Nick Turner. So we did that tour with Sleep back in the early 90s. I can't remember the exact date, but my big thing was to bring awareness to krautrock and space rock to the United States. It seemed people knew of it, but they weren't super aware of it. And so that was my goal, was to make this awareness of music. I mean, my favorite band of all time is Noi. I think the first three Noi albums are the greatest rock and roll albums of all time, bar none. I think Noi 75 is a masterpiece. Everything from even Bowie, Stereolab, everything stems from that record. It's like kind of like where everyone says Funhouse by the Stooges or Andy Warhol by the Velvet Underground. Those first three Noi albums, to everybody in Europe, there's no doubt they were the most influential albums of all time. And I that's been in my soul since I was a very young person. That's not something that just came up. I mean, I wanted to spread the gospel of Noi out here. They're still the most. I really, really love and worship that band with all my heart. I think they are one of the greatest rock and roll bands ever. Yeah. Are you a Noi fan?
You asking me or Lydia?
I'm asking everybody.
It's asking you, Tim.
Sure. Not like you are, but sure.
But look, a very valid point in exposing people to alternative sounds that they might have heard of but not heard. That's the whole point of this podcast, is exposing people to the peripheral that still has some kind of connective tissue. And when you talk about Noi or krautrock, which encompasses quite a few bands that inspired and influenced a lot of music, whether we're talking about Can and Damo Suzuki, or whether we're talking about any number of those bands that were happening in the 70s and 80s, very important to expose people. And especially because Europe did have a different interpretation and then an infiltration of what it inspired and what came out from it.
And being a latecomer, like really worshiping and really loving like the first Public Image record, or
which was amazing.
Yeah, all that stuff. Like when you heard like John Peel like getting on the radio and just going like, oh, if you like that stuff, you got to hear this, and then they would play Noi or Mushroom or something by Can. Being a young person, you couldn't help but be completely like. I remember going to the record store and when I heard Can for the first time, and going like, I just heard this song called Mushroom, and expecting the record guy, this little place in Belfast, Bangor, actually outside Belfast, called Unicorn Records. I expect him to give me this record with a really cool image of these guys with like really cool haircuts and shit. And I was like, oh, this is a bunch of hippies. And he goes, like, no, this happened like, 10
you were born.
And I was like, fuck me, this is like amazing. Like, so.
Did you like early Can, the Malcolm Mooney Can?
Yeah, but not as much as Damo. I think
that's true. Yeah, that's the consensus.
So did krautrock influence then your space rock phase, which maybe you're not even out of yet, or the Farflung stuff, or what you went into next? It's like you have a very divergent influences. I mean, we're talking about Albert Eiler to Pill to Can to Noi to Kraftwerk probably, and all of this in between. And then how did that amalgamate into what your original music was? And what's interesting to me is not only what your original music was, but that how you also stepped sideways to create what we created together, which is, to me, you are a musical schizophrenic the same way that I am.
Well, I think it was just like that kind of like, because the Fall are definitely in there too. Like, like I like with the Fall, it was about that sort of, it was gothic music for people that lived in Manchester or Belfast. It was like about things could be dark and miserable. but
and they were, and they were, and they were, and they were.
Yeah, but homely in sort of like urban environments. It doesn't have to be all about graveyards and fucking specters and stuff
Bela
like that.
Lugosi.
So
yeah.
Were these
I love that. I did love that stuff too. But like the Fall were like kind of connected with stuff like the Fall and you know and John Peel was definitely a big part of that.
And then there was no equivalent to John Peel in America.
No.
Except for maybe what KCRW in LA became. But no, John Peel
was
so
national.
important in the late 70s and 80s.
Yeah, and I'm speaking extremely honestly about that. It was like when you have an earpiece, you don't even have headphones, and you're lying in bed with a transistor radio, and you hear John Peel playing like Careering by Public Image. Then he plays like, Hello Gallo or like After It by Noy or whatever, or
he
like
played Teenage Jesus and thank him very much.
Or Teenage.
Did you follow
one of the only radio stations at the time to do that?
Did you follow John Peel did you follow him all the way to his death? Did you continue to listen to him all the way into the?
No, but he did actually play.
Yes, I know.
The Anubian Lights stuff. He actually did play some of the Anubian Lights stuff with Lydia on the show, because we I think Len downloaded some of the playlists, and he goes like, and he was just like, oh look, they were playing. He was playing like Anubian Lights and Lydia stuff and stuff like that. So he was still obviously connected. So maybe he picked up on some of the vibes that drawn from him or whatever.
But it was helpful as an expansion of the individual's knowledge of the possibility of what music was, which is what John Peel was. He expanded the possibility of influence, of knowledge, and mixed it all up, and that's what's so important.
He was always searching too, and then he would go, you go in different directions. He was brave. I mean, Napalm Death. You go. I mean,
How about this, Tommy? How about the only record he ever banned was the Shock-Headed Peters, who I've also worked with.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, I love the Shock-Headed Peters. Nothing out of our loins, baby, will ever see the light of day.
No, it's all. He's got the thumbs of a murderer.
Shock-Headed Peters was the only, which also included Dave Knight, who I've worked with and did Universal Infiltrators with, but it was kind of a song about not being straight and walking with a boy who's so beautiful you don't even know his name. Anyway, John Peel, besides the Shock-Headed Peters, went all out.
But your thread is constantly using these things for new experiences, new knowledge, but also springboards to the next thing. And so I'm curious, with all the Kraut stuff, I mean, did you get into Karl-Heinz Stockhausen? I mean, that's
no, I loved all aspects of everything that kind of led up to that, like the Asherah temples, and like like obviously, like, everyone thinks of Tangerine Dream as this, like, electronic band that did all these soundtracks and stuff, but like the early stuff with what was it called, when Klaus Schultz was playing drums and stuff like that. I love all the primal stuff, and I've always been a huge sort of krautrock fan. But it's interesting when you actually, I actually did something like 5 or 6 records with Damo Suzuki during the whole.
A very nice guy, by the way. He's very sweet.
Yeah. And I just did a Lydia. I was like, yeah.
Did you like Devo?
No, I didn't get it.
I mean, the early Devo.
I get it. I really love it now, but back then in the UK, we thought it was like stupid kind of comedy music or something like that. But like, I love it now. It was like the Residents.
Well, they were smart enough to be funny. Yeah,
exactly. The Residents was the kind of more cerebral version of Devo, I think. Like, well, actually, wait a minute.
He's pulling something out again. Here we go.
Because I could actually. Yeah. I mean, how funny! This is just a bit. Paul Crawfish, John Crawfish, George Crawfish, and Ringo Starfish. I mean, just that on the record alone just made me piss my pants, like when I was a kid, when I was buying that record. So so that was good comedic value. I think Devo at then it was kind of too, the outfits was too quirky. But now I listen to that drummer and those like riffs, and I fucking love them. But back then it was like kind of like it was too American or something. It was like kind of taking the piss take out of what was going on with the new wave music at that time. But like now I really appreciate it. It's just
so Tommy, now
I didn't understand it at the time, but now I do.
Okay, Tommy, up to the here and now. What's going on? You have your studio in upstate. You're promoting shows at some fantastic, old school theaters up there. You're still doing prints and t-shirts because you also are an incredible graphic artist. Life has changed, and maybe for the better post-COVID, because I think COVID made people kind of reevaluate. I hope it did what was important and what is to be done. And what is to be done is really what cleanses the blood, what fills your heart, what examines and then extracts from your brain all that you know, and that puts it out to those very few that might actually understand or enjoy it. Am I talking for all of us? I think I am.
I think you are, Lydia, and it's like the one you select a thread that you like. You've been doing a lot of stuff yourself, Gallon Drunk, over the years, and what you always hit to a thing that you always gravitate towards, that kind of like gives you the most rewarding benefit from doing what you do. And like for me, it's been like with Farflung's been the longest going band, because it's the
over 20 years, right? Maybe 30 years.
20, like almost 27 years now. And it's like it's a band that's it is a rock band, and it's my best friends, and it's kind of the one thing that we always get to go and do a tour in Europe, or there's always someone wanting to put out a record. So that's the most current thing is Farflung. And actually this is and I actually love being able to do my own artwork for the record. So this is the record that came out this year, or actually the end of last year.
Gorgeous, yeah.
So this is and it's on a label we love called Sulatron. And I'm actually just amazed that I've been doing that record. I mean, I've been doing that band for a long time. But people, it's not like I go like, I'm going to shop the record. We just record the record. And people, we've been on so many labels, but people actually come to us and say like, oh, have you got a new, like there's a cult following for that band. So we're always able to put out a record without there being any effort involved. We just go as a group of people. We record the record mostly out in the desert in California. I fly out there and we work and stuff. So that's the most that's
consistent.
The one thing is that's just been going on is definitely Farflung is the current thing. And then there's obviously the Chrome thing with Helios, but I'm kind of on the end of that cusp, and the Chrome thing would be new for the same amount of time, but it's like,
and then there could be our next. Then there could be our next project, Tommy, which is always on the boil and in the back of my mind, probably coming to the foreground.
Oh, absolutely! And now that you're a neighbor, you can absolutely come over here and add some meat to that pot.
I cannot wait to make that new stew based on all the other stews we've stirred the pot of.
That's true. And there's also the amazing this place where I'm at is also another musical icon is my wife Abby Travis is here. And she's
Nels Klein being your neighbor. You have Abby Travis, who's been on the music scene for many years, doing her own productions, her own music. Been there for a long time. I mean, this is the beauty, is that none of us, and this is what we try to present on the Lydian Spin, we're not going away, motherfuckers. We're going to continue. No. Abby will continue. You will continue. I will continue. Tim Dahl will continue. Nels Klein will continue. And everybody else we've mentioned in this will continue. And part of what inspired us, and part of the groups that did inspire us, whether they were writers or musicians or filmmakers is the fact that they were stubbornly independent and resolute to continue making the music or the literature or the art that, if we didn't, would boil us alive. And if it doesn't boil in your blood, don't fricking do it. Keep it in the garage. I can do it there. Not a biggie. Tommy, it's been really grand to have you here on the Lydian Spin. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Tommy Grenas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lydia.